So, guys, let's focus on 2012's The Avengers, directed by Joss Whedon. What were you guys expecting going into this film in 2012? And let's talk about overall impressions after this viewing. And then we can get stuck into a few other little details.
So this is what, the 6th film in the MCU at the point?
Yes.
Yeah.
Early days, very early days. Such an innocent time.
Yeah.
Gosh, we were all so young.
I remember being...
Connor had hair.
It's true, actually. Yeah, I remember being hugely excited for this. The first time I watched a bunch of the early MCU films, there were some that I could have, taken or leaving them. Like, I wasn't too concerned. I remember kind of coming up to this. I don't think I had ever really witnessed anything like this in terms of, kind of franchises coming together in a meaningful way.
What about Monster Squad with Dracula and Frankenstein?
I take it back then. My bad. Yeah, so I just remember being hugely excited. We were all working at the movie theater at the time, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
So it was obviously, kind of in our faces as it was leading up to this.
So the prior film, Captain America: The First Avenger, had a little sizzle reel at the end.
Yeah.
It starts off with that scene with him in the punching bag, which is exciting enough in its own way. And then it just has that like really fast cutting of like all this shit from the Avengers. No special effects were in there yet. There was just explosions happening. It was all very confusing, but very exciting. I remember the first time I saw that after Captain America at a midnight screening, and I was just like, I don't know. I don't feel like any of the it's funny looking back at those original few films. They're kind of quaint in a way.
Yeah.
And it's funny to think that like we're all so fucking excited for this. Oh my God, Thor's going to meet Iron Man. Like as if that means anything. I guess that's all marketing or just us being shills, but whatever.
It's exciting,
I was so
like
pumped.
coming into a movie already knowing like kind of the context of that film. It's why people enjoy sequels. It's why people enjoy seeing the books that they've read played out on a film.
But it's a bit different kind of sequel. It was
on
another level. Like the epicness that they were going to combine all these characters. That was mind-blowing.
Did I mention that Thor meets Iron Man?
Like, I remember just the prospect of that was tantalizing. I think I've used that word 3 times this week. So it's hit its quota. But I was so excited for this. I remember sitting down in the cinema
It was a
and
midnight
being
screening.
like, I cannot believe we're about to witness this. The culmination of 4 years since Iron Man came out. It was on another level.
And where were you guys at with the MCU in general? Because it's funny because we're all so excited for this movie. I feel like I liked Iron Man 1 a lot. I liked the first Avenger a lot. I really enjoyed Thor. Incredible Hulk was whatever. Iron Man 2 I liked as well. At the time, I don't think anything was really a home run for me. Like crazy amazing. Like I've since gone back and watched things and appreciated them more in different ways.
This was the one that sealed the deal, I think, for me.
For the world.
I think I was kind of in the same boat as you. Like everything was good, and I was really invested in the concept. But in terms of like that knock it out of the park Civil War gut punch moment, like I hadn't had that yet.
Yeah, I like I said, I could have taken or left any number of those films. It's a weird.
That's not what you said before.
Like, left it. I know, because it sounds
I will
weird.
leave in this.
Iron Man was good, but again, like you said, George, it wasn't that punch in the gut Civil War type.
I mean, at the
film.
time,
or Winter Soldier
in 2008.
Dark Knight, there was
2008, man, Iron Man. I loved that movie. I can't tell you how much I loved that movie and the cinema experience. But as time went on, it felt like a smaller film, especially when it comes into comparison with this one.
So I remember watching it. I think we probably watched it all together. It was the midnight screening that it came out, right?
Yep.
I remember being in this huge crowd, and this was a movie that I got, like, it was one of those movies that brought forth visceral reactions. And not just because I remember being funnier than I ever imagined it would be, because there was it was Joss Whedon's writing, and it was brilliant, and everything I wanted it to be. But I also remember just like my mouth being just left open with that hammer scene on Captain's shield. Like I remember the reaction from the crowd and the reaction that I got, and I will never be able to recreate that moment because it's just such a moment.
Yeah, it's a great battle, that one.
Yeah, and so yeah, I remember coming out of it being completely and utterly enamored, and I would walk back in at certain moments the subsequent weeks to people viewing that to witness certain kind of moments in that film, and I love those when you're almost watching the crowd as much as you're watching the film, just to see how they react and to try and recapture that moment.
But I don't think anyone's denying, like, in 2012, that delivered. Like, that film delivered in spades.
I'm trying to think back. I'm not sure I was as fulfilled by it as
Really?
the world kind of was. Yeah,
Okay.
because I think I said I didn't love the MCU necessarily, but I think I liked it, or I had more affinity for it than most people did at the time. And some aspects of this movie just didn't quite deliver for me somehow. I remember thinking, like, the first 45 minutes or so, I was just like, this isn't amazing at all. But the moments in it certainly has those moments that are now iconic, I feel.
Yeah.
And I'm certain I went and watched it at 10 a.m. the next day again, and probably a couple more times.
Yeah. So yeah, like I said, I was really around it. Got to get that in there somewhere.
And what about this viewing, guys? How did you feel after watching it this time?
So I technically actually watched it like a month ago. But
But I only watched it like in 2012.
I was really impressed because on the coattails of some really spectacular films, like Winter Soldier, like Captain America, Civil War, and films like Age of Ultron, which I really enjoyed. Spoiler alert. I kind of expected this one to be like MCU light. Like, I just didn't expect it to have the same impact. And I went back and I watched it, and I just found that it was beyond the hype. It's a solid film. Like, I expected, once I go back to it, like, to have the curtain kind of like, it's no longer such a novel thing to see all these characters together, and I can't just rely on that to get me past the line. But underneath all that, it's a good film. It's well written. It looks good. Yeah. So I think I was pleasantly surprised with how much I enjoyed it this round.
Yeah, I was the same. I really, really had a great time watching this again. There are a few elements that we'll discuss today that I don't think is a complete home run. But on the whole, like, this film holds up. The gags hold up. The character moments are great. The way the Avengers actually integrate as a team, like, that's really the crux of this film. And that's where it really works. And that all comes down to Joss Whedon and his kind of way he writes characters and is able to do ensemble casts.
Ben, you?
I find it hard to articulate where I'm at with this movie, because I've been very honest about the fact that it's pretty low down there on my Marvel rankings overall. And I can't work out exactly why that is, because I think it nails so many things, and all the stuff you just rattled off there. Totally, I think it really gives every character, except Captain America, something to do and a really important part, and really not just bringing in these random characters and all having them be the hero. They all have their own place on the team and their own reason for being there, except Hawkeye. And it's funny going back to this movie that seems like it has so few characters now, and it's not really able to service all of them.
It seems tiny.
It's so weird. And anything with S.H.I.E.L.D. feels like so old Marvel.
Yeah.
It's so different.
I agree.
Like, Nick Fury being around.
I liked this. We might get into that a little bit later. Sorry. What I was going to say is, did you guys get a weird sense of nostalgia? Like, it felt weird to, like, because it was like 6 years ago or something like that. 6 years ago. To look at a film like this and feel like, oh, I remember that.
Yeah,
Like,
and
watching
like,
that.
particularly Tony Stark's beard. Like, he's got that really angular, sharp beard from sort of Phase 1. And I was like, whoa, that looks so old school.
His look changes a lot.
Yeah.
Of things. And Captain America was still, like, really blonde in that one.
I remember the sequence where Iron Man first flies to Stark Tower, and he lands, and the suit is sort of coming off on its own.
Taken off.
And I remember the first time
Mm.
watching that
Mm.
in the cinema and just being like,
Blown away.
holy fuck,
Yeah.
man, this is insane. And nowadays it's just like, we see
Yeah, he needs like a whole floor of a building to take the suit
Yeah.
off him, and now he's got nanotechnology.
Or like even just, the first time he shows up in the film, like the rock music coming, like AC/DC coming on, and you're just like, fuck yeah.
Yeah, back when they were making him really AC/DC.
Yeah.
Yeah. Can we talk about the opening scene? The opening scene with Loki at the Tesseract, the whole shield building sort of imploding in of itself.
Not around it.
Interesting way to kick things off.
I think it's a bad action scene. I think it is so dark. I remember the first time I watched it, and I can't remember if it was in 3D or not, but I remember this was the phase where there was a big problem with 3D movies being too dark.
Yeah.
Couldn't see anything. And that whole shield installation part, I don't think it's great filmmaking. I think it's the weakest part of the film.
It's got like, in one regard, I really like it because Avengers film, it could start off with a fucking humongous first action sequence, and it's like kind of pared back in a lot of ways. It's just kind of like a bit more of a car chase scene. And so I kind of like that, how it doesn't go, it really holds back a few elements until later on in New York where it goes nuts.
It's very much not a superhero action scene, and the characters that are involved are very much not superheroes. And I'll be honest, I kind of like that aspect to it. It wasn't kind of essentially blowing its load too quickly.
I don't criticize the scale of it at all. I just don't think it was well done. And I don't like my favorite thing about the MCU up to this point was easily Loki by a wide margin.
Do you like his entrance?
I don't like him in this movie at all.
Really?
I'm Loki of Asgard, burdened with glorious purpose. I'm like, what the fuck are you talking about, Loki?
But I think it speaks to his, like, he would kind of pump up his voice and the way he speaks to, like, lower, what he considers lower beings.
We'll get into this later. I think Hiddleston does great work in this movie, but I think it's like the least well characterized that his character's been.
Love how he looks in this. I love how he's all greasy and dark, and like that first look where he's
looks
like,
strung out.
He actually looks like one of those things from Truth or Dare, that movie, that smiley face thing they have. But there's just like a couple weird things in this, like that one particular line that Nick Fury has about the world will continue to spin. That really feels jarring to me, and a lot of the low-angled shots, like the scene feels very out of control, and it doesn't sort of come together very well.
So many Dutch angles in this movie.
Yeah,
Crazy.
which kind of followed through from Thor. That was a big thing in Thor.
Yeah.
But
the beginning scene I felt was very much a setup. So I didn't really pay too much. Like, for me, the movie hadn't really started. Like, this was the prequel. Like, this was before the movie really starts, just to kind of set some stuff up. So I never really was too critical of it. It was interesting enough that, and is interesting enough that I'm kind of like, all right, you've got me. Like, I'm interested to see what you're doing with this. And I think it's important for them to set up what they're attempting to do with the Tesseract.
But I feel, I agree. I just feel like the fact that it was pared back, I really appreciated it. But there were some weird decisions in there. One quick thing I want to mention with this is my fiance. She was like, "Oh, this reminds me of the finale of Buffy when exactly the same thing happens. They're driving in a car, actually in a bus in Buffy, but in a truck, let's say, and the earth is just collapsing and they're driving away." And then I was like, "Oh yeah, Joss Whedon did Avengers." She was like, "Holy fuck!" Like it was interesting how he lifted that from Buffy. And it's just like a cool little moment whilst I was watching it this time that I never really picked up on. But yeah, what do you know? What I mean, next thing to talk about, I think, is like the team coming together, and those sequences with.
Are we just going to do plot now?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's part of the plot.
Derailing the show, George.
I think that's part of the plot.
Okay, no, we can jump into that. I think that so they had an enormous burden in this, which was that while they did have solo movies for a lot of these characters, I think it was still at a point where they needed to introduce each character as if they were introducing the character for the first time. At least in a kind of like you'd be able to follow what was going on.
Well, they kind of fucked themselves a little bit as well, because last time we saw Hulk, he's on the run in South America or whatever. Last time we saw Captain America, he'd just gotten out of the ice after being frozen for 70 years. Last time we saw Thor, he was literally unable to get back to Earth.
Yeah, that was
which
the
is a
biggest one.
Big sticking point in this film.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Iron Man was fine.
Yeah.
Bit of an alcoholic, but they didn't really follow that up.
I liked how they introduced the characters apart from Thor.
Actually, no, sorry. Iron Man, the last time we'd seen him, he'd been rejected from the Avengers.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So
Yeah.
they really, in every case, they kind of gave himself a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I liked they kind of made or sort of Romanoff's or Black Widow's entrance. I thought was really cool.
Yeah.
That was a very nice scene.
Yep.
It sets her up to have a purpose, like with intelligence and wit.
She, I think, has the third most
in
screen
the
time in this
Avengers.
film of the Avengers
Okay, right.
characters in this movie, which is a really cool choice, I think.
Yeah.
They sacrificed Hawkeye for it, but whatever.
So they, I like her introduction scene. I like how her introduction scene then fed into the Hulk's introduction
Yes.
scene.
And I love that one of my favorite moments is like we're alone, and then when his anger levels go through the roof. You know, you see all the SWAT team.
When he pretends to have
and you
issues,
see the
yeah.
SWAT team outside the shield. I love that little moment. It's fun.
Yeah. And then we and then you get the Iron Man introductions a little bit later. But I like how they just start kind of slowly putting these characters in. And it doesn't feel forced. It doesn't feel like they don't just all arrive in a room and just start duking it out right from the beginning.
Except for Thor. He feels incredibly forced.
Thor is the, I mean, they talk about
How
that.
much dark matter did
Yeah,
your father
yeah.
have to summon to bring you here?
Which I always thought was
All right.
There's a movie called Thank You for Smoking where they talk about that that thing where he's like, oh, just say a what's my thingy.
Yeah.
And he's like, what is that? He's like, oh, you just say, thank God we invented that thing that allowed us to do the thing, and then never address it again,
Yeah.
which is exactly what they've done in this film.
Yeah.
Which is, as far as I'm concerned, it's lazy writing, but they didn't really have many other options apart from like they could maybe done it a 20-minute.
You just glance over it and you're on to the next thing, and
Yeah,
it works.
It's
It
a
works.
thing. Like they probably knew they were going to get shit for it, and they're like, it's not worth drawing this movie over time or eating into other aspects of the film. Let's just fucking do the line and just get over it.
Yep.
Which I've always thought that Marvel was really good at when they switched.
Terrence Howard for
Thank
Don
you.
Cheadle.
I'm glad that you knew what I was talking about. I just completely blanked on it.
Always
But
got
when
it.
when
You did
they
the wink.
yeah,
Yeah, in Iron Man 2, and he comes in,
He's
he's
like,
just
"I'm
like,
here.
it's me, I'm here.
deal with it,
Deal with it.
and they just move on. So I was like, that's
Never
probably-
noticed that at the time. I don't know
Oh,
how.
neither
It's,
did I.
it's so
When I
on the nose.
When I rewatched it, I was like, that's super clever, actually.
Yeah.
Um,
That's what you got to do when you cast someone who looks nothing like the other actor.
But this first half
Yeah.
of the film, like the Avengers assembling, it's almost got a spy movie, James Bond vibe. Like he's in India, they're in Poland or Eastern Europe with Romanov. It's got like this very like big world. We're opening up the scale of it, and I quite like that. Up until they get to the helicarrier.
Yeah. Well, it's really the kind of culmination of all this is that fight scene in the woods, which I'm going to start with the negative, just to get it out of the way because I really like this scene. I always thought the depth of where Loki is sitting always seemed a bit weird because at one point it looks like he's just on a small mound very close to them. But then on the other, it's like a cliff that's very far away.
Oh, right.
So I always got very confused by
I
the way
assume
that
that's
they
a
shot that.
digital set, yeah, and it doesn't look any good.
It doesn't.
It's
no, it
really
doesn't
that's
look good at
another
all.
part of the movie that's really dark, and you just can't. I think they're just trying to hide the fact that they haven't even blocked it probably.
Yeah, so that was weird. But beyond that, I thought that the fight scene was super good. Like the fight scene between Iron Man and Thor is
Love it.
spectacular.
Love
It's
it.
like it's well executed. It's a little contrived. It's like we're gonna have the heroes fight, but
I love it.
it
It
works.
works.
It works the way
It
they
has
do
to
it.
happen.
I guess so.
Like that's what you're there for. You know.
I just feel like this movie suffers in retrospect from the movies that have come since that I think have woven many more characters more elegantly together.
I will agree with that.
Because this
Oh, yeah.
movie, the first half is just so much table setting and cleaning house after the first bunch of movies and getting
But
so
which
many
it has
disparate.
to, like, it's
absolutely,
just-
absolutely. I think they do pretty much the best job they can out of it.
Yeah.
But there are just so many disparate elements they have to kind of bring together. And
Are you talking about and now watching it in 2018 once we've got all
Well, they-
these amazing films?
mean,
yeah, I
It's-
mean, once you,
it's-
like after you've watched Civil War, which I
Yeah.
maintain is a miracle, that
Yeah.
movie, it's like This looks a little clumsier.
Yeah. And I mean, I think it got to a point, particularly with Civil War, where they didn't have to set the table anymore. They're like, if you're not invested in this world by now, that's your fault, not
That's
us.
the thing. Yeah, they have the confidence now to just be like, if you haven't seen these movies,
This
give
is
up.
on you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's not a viable
Do you
thing.
know who we are?
Yeah. It's just not a viable thing for them to be, retreading steps, when they're 10 movies in.
Yeah.
It's just like, just watch it or find a different franchise. So, yeah. So it does feel a bit contrived. It does feel a bit kind of mushed together. But considering the task that they had, which if you think about it, at the time, fitting like 8 major characters or whatever it was into one film, just felt impossible.
Yeah.
But they pulled it out like just a goddamn miracle. They pulled it off.
So much of this film, you have to kind of recognize that this had a function of where it came in the MCU at that particular time. It is what it is.
And especially that they were doing it for the first time.
But I love that
it's pretty
Iron Man
untested.
4 sequence. I love that bit.
Really love it.
I really have a good time with that. And especially
and
smashing him through the cliff face. Like, I love that
Oh,
bit.
see, that's the one I don't like.
Oh, you don't like
That's
that
the
bit?
only like action section in that thing, because that touches on. I didn't understand the depth. I didn't understand where the cliff was meant to be.
Okay.
Why, like how far Loki was meant to be away from him.
Fair enough, yeah.
It just, I didn't. It was obviously a very shoddy job that was dark and very digital. But the hammer on the shield,
Great.
that was a mouth wide open moment.
It's a good moment. Yep. One of the many in this film.
Yeah.
Can we go back a tiny bit? Because I think it's something that Benny will want us to talk more about.
Correct.
Which is once again tying into the James Bond aspect is that soiree that they go to, and there's the orchestra and the big dinner party, the drinks party, and we get Loki kind of for the first real, like, his big entrance scene. And we kind of get to know more about what his goal is in this film. And I know this has been an issue for you, Benny, like his motives as the villain in this.
Yeah. Well, I'll just go one step further. I don't think the plot of this movie is any good or makes any sense whatsoever.
In what aspect?
What is Loki trying to do? Why is he trying to do it? I don't think any of it fits together whatsoever.
I don't.
Not with what became before this movie, and not with what came after.
I disagree.
Of course you do.
Yeah, well, it's just practically my job at this point.
We pay you for.
Yeah. Look, I feel like it's relatively like straightforward, which is, I'm not entirely sure what point you don't.
Okay, so how I justify it is, and I guess I'm just going to skip my problems with it. What I think he's doing is just acting out after Thor. He's just fucking shit up because he wants to get back to Asgard. So he's teamed up with this Thanos dickhead, and he's like, all right, I'm doing this now. But it's not a particularly compelling character thing for him.
Yeah, I think what I took out of it was similar.
Also, de-eyeing that guy is a bit much. It's a really dark thing for someone who's an anti-hero now to have done.
Well, but I mean, like, that's in the grand scheme of things. Yeah, it's
it's
least.
Just he goes.
It's a more gory thing that he's done, but he like tried to destroy the entire city.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But he went from being much more nuanced and not black and white in Thor, I feel, to being just a bit more of a cackling villain in this one.
In this
which
one,
I don't think suits his character.
But he's trying to prove himself in this one, and I kind of watched
Yeah.
it with that question in mind this time. The fact that you don't like his motives, and for me, his motive is like he wants to be up there with the ice giants. He wants to be a leader. He wants to be like
No,
crushing
he hates the
motherfuckers.
ice giants.
Yeah, but he wants to be better. Like he's trying to prove himself, and he's like, you puny humans, like I'm gonna take over this motherfucker.
I think so.
And it's like him proving himself.
I think
and
what it
putting
is
his mark.
specifically. I think what it is specifically for me is his just actual the machinations of his plot don't make any sense to me.
Again, which parts?
Like, you mean what he's trying to do in New York with
the entire
Chitauri?
thing. Like he gets captured on purpose for some reason, and
I think
beat by
for me,
beat, it doesn't make any
It's
sense.
just kind of
point
rolling
is-
with it. That's kind of how I take it.
The way that I kind of justify it is that he didn't actually have to be captured in order, like, for him to go through his plot. But I think, and I think Tony Stark explains this relatively well, which is that it's not necessarily about what he needed to do; it's about the theatrics of it. He wanted that kind of the recognition that you don't own me. Like,
All right,
I'm so much better than you.
Let's work on the same team here. Let's work out what he was doing let's work out what he was doing in this
Oh,
movie. So
the actual mechanism. All right, yeah. So
let's figure it out. So he's working with Thanos. What's the guy called?
I don't know.
The guy on that rock.
The guy
that
with the
rock
two
thing.
thumbs. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he's working.
Great
working
look
with them.
for that character, by the way.
He's okay. I'm glad he gets
I really
his
like
neck broken by
He's very fast.
Ronan the Accuser.
I approve of that.
He's very fast, Gabe. So he's given the Mind Stone in a scepter.
Yep.
Yes.
And the Tesseract. So he has the Mind Stone in a scepter, and he's got the Tesseract. Thanos is just giving these things out. He's like, I got 2 of these, now I got 0. All right.
No, he didn't have the Tesseract.
No, but he's coming to get it. He takes over Stellan Skarsgård. Anyway, so what happens next?
So he is basically sent Loki to go get the Tesseract. He said,
Yeah.
use the Tesseract
Yeah.
to open up a bridge.
Yeah.
And then once you've done that, this is all right. So I hate to kind of interrupt halfway through myself, but I never understood how he sent Loki to the Tesseract. Like, how did he communicate with the Tesseract?
Well,
to
he
get him
just
there?
showed up there in a post-credits bit.
Yeah, like I was just like that.
So much important plot stuff happens in post-credits.
Yeah.
Sometimes, like, it's
but
just
also
now
like I don't
Loki's
understand how
here.
that. All right. Anyways, doesn't matter. He gets sent, and then he has to then open up a portal, which apparently he already knew how to do. But like, forget that. The rest of this is to be able to open up a portal big enough and long enough to allow an entire army to enter, and then presumably he then hands over said Tesseract to Thanos. So once he gets to Earth, it's about taking over Skarsgård. And getting him to create things. So while he's off creating, I think it's important that he doesn't know where the Tesseract is, so that if he does come into contact with Thor, who presumably is looking for him, he can't be able to tell Thor where it is. And B, I think, even though he could have just gone somewhere else but not tried to get caught, I think at this point he's like, I want to make sure that these guys aren't a threat. I'm going to make sure that they're torn apart. I'm going to do it from the inside, because not only might that be effective, but it's also theatric. And I want them to know it's me. I want them to like feel safe and secure, but I'm going to really fuck with them. So I think that was the mechanics of his thought process.
Yeah, I think the broad strokes, when painted like that, work. I just think the step by step is a bit bizarre. Like it's just an action set piece excuse.
Yeah, possibly. But I mean, at the end of the day, you just kind of roll with
Which
those kind
is
of
fine, yeah,
punches.
because the set pieces are fucking awesome.
So, I mean, in general terms, I'm cool with that. I liked how they started setting up some relationships that have really paid off. The Robert Downey Jr. and Mark Ruffalo team up. I
Science
really
Bros.
like.
Really good fun.
I liked how they right from the get-go started building up tension between Captain America and Tony Stark. I thought that was a really good long play.
Yeah,
Take
in
that
both
suit off, what are you?
in both films.
Both of them,
Yeah.
We're discussing today.
the entire relationship between them, very well done.
So
Which I
they
love.
obviously had that as a long game early on. And then,
And what about the dynamics of the group? You know, those scenes in the science lab with them arguing.
Fantastic.
I
Yeah,
love
really
that
good.
stuff.
The
that entire
tense-
middle section
the tense
is
stuff, the comedic
brilliant.
stuff. Joss Whedon nails it
Yeah.
so well.
I
It's a little quippy at points.
Yeah,
very
that
Joss Whedon.
that adopted statement.
I like that.
That I love that.
He's adopted.
It's
I
great.
don't like Black Widows. I don't see how that's a party line. Like I'm like, okay, this isn't really the time to be making lame jokes, Black Widow.
I love the I get that reference joke.
that is brilliant.
That's
Yeah,
probably my
that's
favorite joke in this.
So based in character.
Yeah.
It's fucking genius.
So yeah, the middle section was really. I was around that. I gotta stop saying that.
No, that's your thing.
I really appreciated that.
Yeah, I really dug those middle sections. The only bit that really felt so cheesy, and to use one of your other expressions, Connor, hammed in there, was when Captain America is going for a little sneak around and he opens a box. Oh, and
Dun,
ooh,
dun,
there's the
dun.
Hydra uniform. Oh, I just felt like... Oh,
Yeah,
and it looked like the same uniform from World War II. It's like, if you just been just in storage for like 70
And
years,
his comment about your computers are running a little bit slow for me. I was just like, stop trying to make Captain America relevant in this, or at least do it in a better way.
Yeah, so kind of cool foreshadowing, though, I guess, with when Winter Soldier comes around, like Shield's dark side. I don't think it was intended to be, but
yeah,
you can kind of take it that way.
You know,
It was obviously a common theme that they started there.
Captain America looks terrible in this movie.
Yeah,
as well.
and they obviously had.
But that's part of the play, and I love how his uniform evolved after this one. Like it's so bright and colorful.
Absolutely, but
and Agent Coulson says at the beginning, sometimes we need some old fashioned.
yeah,
like,
but
there's
it
part
doesn't
of the
need to look
concept.
bad. It looked great in the first Avenger, and it looks great every other time.
It just pops. It's like it's a comic book.
didn't
No,
like
I'm
it.
not saying
I didn't
because
like
it's
it.
bright though. I think the design's not very good.
I
think it's
disagree.
the worst costume in the MCU.
Yep.
Do you? Can you? Because I think they've nailed every other one pretty much.
Because I'll be honest, I was even more. Hawkeye excluded because he's not really in the Avengers for half the movie, but he is by far the weakest. Captain America.
In
I
terms
felt.
of,
I just felt
I
in
like
terms
it.
of character, in terms
no,
of like
this movie didn't
do any
support
good
him
Yeah,
at all. And
Really?
they cut some good stuff with him as well. The deleted scenes are a bit
I
devastating.
think he's got some good little parts in here.
Is
Like
there something
obviously
like him
you've got
drawing
so
or-
many characters to deal with. You
No,
can't give
absolutely.
him so much time. But his punching bag scene, I think that just a really, in terms of story economics,
Totally. Have you
great.
seen the deleted scenes? Because
Fantastic.
there's some.
I was going to chuck them on. I didn't.
Okay, so you
Because I was like, Benny's going to ask me, and I was like, I'm not going to say fuck
No,
you.
because there's some good stuff about him checking up on the history of all the people he was in the war with.
Right. Okay.
And looking up Peggy Carter, and then it kind of there's a scene of him in a cafe just sketching, which is really nice. That's a part of his character that we saw in the first Avenger.
Yeah.
Just a nice little character moment. But he's quite shortchanged in this film. I think he has like the least screen time out of.
yeah.
Out of
And they don't, what screen time they do use, I don't find it particularly compelling. I mean, in the grand scheme of the group.
I quite like him. He's still figuring out how
I always
to
like
integrate.
him. I mean, the
in the
performance is
modern
always
world.
great.
Yeah, but who would you say is a weaker character?
The way that they
Hawkeye.
I mean,
we can talk about Hawkeye. He can have his whole thing.
excluding
His whole
Hawkeye
thing.
because obviously he's the bad guy for half the film.
With his USB arrow.
What about? You.
It's the weirdest
You go,
USB I've
you
ever
go.
seen.
I just want to say the one way they really did deliver with Captain America was in the final set piece where he really takes charge of the team, and they
I love that bit.
make a very clear point of showing him as being like the strategist.
Yeah.
We need a perimeter on 13th Street, and the cop repeats all the instructions. I love that a little bit. It's fun.
That cop is in Agent Carter, the TV series.
Oh, is he?
So they've been like, oh yeah, it's his grandfather.
Yes.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Of course. So I'm trying to kind of think of where we're up to.
Helicarrier, and then everything starts going wrong.
So I think when everything starts going wrong, that's where the movie actually begins, and everything from like getting to the helicarrier onwards is aces. Like the whole thing is just fantastic.
It's
love the entrance of the Hulk. Very cool scene.
They do great work with the Hulk in this.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's the best the Hulk's ever looked.
I think
it's
the
most
Hulk
flawless.
looks better in this than Age of Ultron.
Yeah.
I'm going to go out there and say
Yeah.
that.
And I think it looks better in Age of Ultron than in Ragnarok.
There's some Ragnarok scenes that he looks really good.
Yeah.
You can't just think of the gladiators, and you got to think like afterwards.
I don't know.
and-
I don't know. I guess because everything else looks so bad, it just doesn't work. But no, in this he looks flawless.
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
fucking nailed it
Yeah.
so hard, and they've not gotten there since.
Great little fight scene with
Thor.
Thor as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I
Really
love that bit where he tries to pick up the hammer
Yeah.
and he goes through the floor.
He's getting real
Like
pissed
that
off about
is
it too.
such a sick visual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you feel the force, like the sound effects and stuff. Like
Yeah.
it really has impact.
Nice little kind of, I guess, Easter egg almost. Joss Whedon has come out and said that his greatest achievement with that film is getting Mewling Quim in there, past the censors.
Which one's that? What's
Yeah,
that?
I really don't like that when Loki calls Black
Oh,
Widow a
yeah.
mewling Quim.
I picked up on that this time, and I was like, I need to use that in my day-to-day vocab.
because he's essentially calling her the C word, which is just,
Yeah.
I think, really like ugly and misogynistic coming from Loki, who's a character I really
Yeah.
like.
Well,
But it
but
just
he's
has,
the
like-
bad guy. You can't like.
No, but I'm saying he's a character I really like.
Yeah.
So, when he's doing evil things, I can be okay. But when he's just being a dick about it, I'm like, come on, man, you're better than that.
It's
La-
just got a
lady-
ring.
lady-
It's got a ring to it.
Yeah,
It's well said,
yeah.
but
You
ladies
can
love
try and
Loki.
commit a genocide, but don't be misogynistic. That's
Yeah.
just too far.
Absolutely.
Fucking hell. But that I liked that scene.
Yeah, otherwise, I definitely do, yeah.
Yeah.
Great scene.
Look,
What about?
I think it gives a good lull afterwards. So I think this is a really intense moment with the Hulk and Thor and Loki escaping and Carter dying.
Coulson.
Coulson, sorry.
Which I want to talk a little bit about. Sad face.
Oh, we can talk about that. I thought that was a cool little payoff.
Yeah.
And
And it
gutsy. It
sucked.
had to happen with Whedon at the helm.
It sucked that Coulson died. You know, we'd had all these films. Like, I'd gotten really attached to that character when he died in this film. And when watching it in 2012, I was like, I was upset because he was a fun character,
Yeah.
particularly in Thor.
I mean,
Dude,
he's had more screen time in the MCU than any other
yeah.
character, so
And
he's
to
doing
not-
okay.
But I respect Whedon for his willingness and almost sadistic need to kill off important characters.
Someone had to go, man. They're the Avengers. They got to avenge something.
Yeah. And I like the way that he put that in there. And I like how he didn't just take a benign character that had shown up at the beginning of this film.
Yeah.
I like how he took a character that is essentially innocent. Like, no one hates Coulson.
Mm.
He's just this kind of
And he's
You
a
know,
human. Like, he's not
second-
a
yeah,
jacked up
he's
with
the second tier
superpowers.
character in this film
yeah.
that no one expects to have.
Yeah.
He's important enough that he's not going to die off, but he's not like little known enough to die off. He's in that safe zone. And
And well,
Whedon was like, guess again.
probably been in the most or tied for the most MCU films up to that point.
Yeah.
Oh,
so-
at least because he's been in. He would have been in every single one.
Well,
apart
he
from
he
Hulk.
was in Thor and Iron Man 2, I think.
He would have been, yeah.
Iron Man 2, yeah.
I love the visual of the Captain America cards being tossed over the glass table and seeing the blood on it. It was just a nice way to
Nice
sort
visual.
of put it all together. What happens with Coulson in Agents of Shield?
Yeah, how does he
How does
not
he-
dead?
Or is it a prequel to this?
Nick Fury does a horrible, unethical procedure on him to bring him back to life.
And is he all fucked up?
He's not. He doesn't love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
He doesn't love it.
He spends a lot of time, like, he doesn't even know he died.
Right.
He thought he just nearly died and got saved, and then the first
Okay.
season is kind of all about him figuring that out.
Is he still in Agents of Shield?
Yep.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well done. Yeah. So I like how that went from this big action scene. I liked the lull, but I also liked that the lull didn't last too long.
Yeah.
Like, I felt it was just this perfect amount of time for them to regroup
I agree.
and then hit New York City for that final battle.
I agree.
And before you know it, you're back into the action. Like, you've had a little bit of a breather, straight into it, and them really coming together as a team.
The final battle is masterful. Like,
It's
it's
brilliant.
amazing. It was like 30 minutes or something. It's just
Awesome.
I don't get tired of it.
works on every level. There's so much happening.
Little bit
the-
of green screen.
Well, the entire city
questionability.
is like CGI.
Yeah.
The
Looks
way
fantastic.
the way they put that, yeah, it looks amazing. The way
holds
they
up
put that
really
together,
well.
it's crazy. Yeah.
And those Iron Man shots look absolutely spotless.
Mm.
Yeah.
And scenes like the one where we just go from character to character. That's the shit that makes you watch Justice League and being like, what the fuck are they doing?
Yeah.
Like, how do they not have something like that?
That circle shot is
Iconic.
it is iconic.
Jinx.
And that and the Thor catching his hammer as Iron Man or as
Yeah.
Steve Rogers or Captain America is fending off. Like, just that slow motion
Shield.
scene, like that it's spectacular. It's wonderful. It's kind of everything you wanted. And you're right when you talk about Justice League, like, that's all you wanted. It's just this kind of scene of them doing their thing.
And same with Transformers. Like, how many times have we seen a city destroyed, destroyed and obliterated? And this could have been so fatigued. Don't laugh at me.
I just,
I'm
like,
making
it
a
just seems
point.
like such left field.
No, it's a city getting leveled as the last sequence in an action film. How
Yeah.
many times have we seen that?
It's
and this one keeps my interest every single time.
It's such a credit to this film and the writing, I feel like, and the characters, because
Yes.
like I really maintain that I don't think this film makes sense. I don't think it has a good plot. The Chitauri, just the random, henchmen, ant army, they all die at the same time at the end. It's like,
Yeah, that
I don't think any of that stuff stands up on its own, but everything else is so strong that it just
Yeah.
doesn't matter at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I liked the character arc that Iron Man had. It really sets up for the rest of the MCU.
That's what I was going to say, especially in the context of having Iron Man 3.
Yeah.
That really justifies it.
So yeah, and even the next Avengers as well, that he plays a huge part. So yeah, very very much that final battle scene I was really impressed with.
Yeah. I
And it
still
had
think
another two really great Hulk moments. Him punching Thor, which has been a laugh out loud moment for me for years.
Yeah.
And obviously him ragdolling
Loki.
Loki, yeah.
Loki, which I think is
classic moment.
classic moment. And I really like how they went back and did a shout out to that in
Ragnarok.
Ragnarok.
Yeah, both those
like,
moments in the cinema with the big crowd were just the fucking
fantastic.
best.
and I was telling you, like that and the shield and hammer scene were the scenes that I would go in and check on the audience because they were such like they were visceral moments where the audience would either laugh like just hysterically or just gasp or.
I think it was my fourth viewing of the Avengers when I finally heard Hulk say "puny god" because there would just be so much laughter every time that I could never make out what he was saying.
I always got pissed off at the crowd. I was like, you can't. All right, you laugh, but then you have to quiet down to hear the next thing so you can laugh again because it's funny.
Yeah. Give it a second.
So I think we've kind of pretty much just given the movie for verbatim. I was wondering if we could just kind of touch on a couple of other things, aspects of the film. The first of all being the special effects in it. You know, how did this movie look to you in terms of the execution?
It holds up, man. I think the design gets it over the line. I think the Chitauri looked fantastic.
Yeah.
It just like the look of the film gets over the line.
So wait, are you talking special effects or are you talking like the design of the film?
I think
like,
they inextricably connected. You know,
I disagree because I think that you can have something that's really designed well but not executed well. Like you can see what they were going for.
I don't think the design's very interesting of the Chitauri. They're very whatever.
No, I disagree.
I
like those
agree.
big ships.
They're
like the big, like with the big beaks that look like the xenomorphs.
Oh, the ships,
I
the ships
love
are cool.
those.
The
Those
space
look
whales are cool.
dope.
No, I just mean the Chitauri
Space
themselves.
whales. Yeah, aren't they all the same?
Yeah, exactly. They're not interesting whatsoever.
No, but like, aren't those space whales the Chitauri?
No, the Chitauri it's the foot soldiers, I assume.
What are those big things? Then?
Space whales. This is a weird point to get hung up on.
Yeah,
Okay.
like just
Well, whatever. I sort of group them as the Chitauri army. Like I liked their look.
yeah, it was fine. I will say that compared to some other films like Thor, which has a little bit more leeway on how kind of extravagant they go with the design, you know, Avengers didn't really blow my mind in terms of that.
It keeps it pretty grounded, and I think this goes back to that spy aspect I was talking about. It feels like real world, still holding that Iron Man kind of. This is the real world. It does have those sci-fi elements.
It was the cap on Phase 1, which was very kind of, you know, in a lot of ways grounded. Even Thor felt weirdly grounded.
Yeah.
At least compared to what it is now.
I think for a 2012 film, like coming out 6 years ago, it looks fantastic.
Looks great. The helicarrier is spectacular in terms of how it looks and how it stands up. I thought it was really impressive.
There's some dodgy green screen in there. Like,
and with the Chitauri, when they're like flying through the city and you're doing a lot of like, you know, obviously green screen shots, that's probably the thing that, you know, stands out to me the most.
There's a couple of dodgy shots. I think on the whole, though, it's definitely one of the better looking like giant city destruction things because that's where things usually get a bit ropey.
Yeah, well, because they didn't double down on a lot of like weird CGI dust. They weren't leveling entire cities, where like entire half buildings crashing down, big dust everywhere. Like
it was one of those rare examples, like the recent Rampage, funnily enough, where they just clearly put the time and money and effort in that they needed.
Yeah.
Like so much was banking on this. They just gave it what it needed, which is very cool.
Yeah. I did want to mention one other scene that was just a jump up and down scene for me, which was Mark Ruffalo returning and then doing his "I'm always angry" scene as he turns around, and then you kind of get that slightly slow-mo transforming into the Hulk, and that it gives me even chills now thinking about that. Still, probably
that
one
was
of my
never a
favorite
big
scenes.
moment for me.
Really,
and everyone cites that as like one of the big three of the movie. Like,
yeah,
or one of the big three of the MCU.
Of the MCU, of Phase 1 at least.
Yeah, it never did much for me. I don't know why.
That's very odd because I just find that such an awesome and iconic scene.
Yeah, no, I love Ruffalo in this. I think that's a very, very cool scene.
He does a great job stepping in for the first time.
Yeah.
Yep.
What about negatives?
Well, I was going to say before we get into with the design, we've already talked about some negatives. I think we've been fairly fair for this film so far. I was wondering if we could get into just any standouts for cast. I mean, generally speaking, we've kind of gone through it and said that it's everyone did really well. Is there anyone in particular that you think? I know that you mentioned Hiddleston as a.
I think he does a great job. Not for acting, but just in terms of being a really good sport. I think Jeremy Renner, who has 2 thankless roles in 2 movies before he gets to do anything.
One of those is very much deserved.
What?
Thor,
right?
He's useless.
Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, no. And in this, he's just playing like a
Henchman.
brainwashed henchman.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is like
Yeah, that's a bit rough.
shit. It's a shit way to bring the character. Like, why even have the character there? But I think at the end when he's just been Hawkeye, I think he's bringing that charm that he's shown a lot since then.
Yeah, I feel like everyone's very solid in here. I don't think anyone is like, oh wow, they're so much better than anyone else. I think Scarlett Johansson probably does like a better job than she did in Iron Man 2. I think there was a definite obvious step up there. But in terms of like anyone that's obviously stronger than anyone else, I didn't really get that. I thought everyone across the board was really solid.
I think Sam Jackson is giving a shit, which is cool to see from him. He's just doing his thing, but he's bringing his game.
Yeah,
Yep.
I guess.
And Chris Hemsworth, I feel like, does a really good
yeah, he
job.
was pretty good.
I like the scene.
The hair was better.
Yeah,
It's so
much better.
Without the
Oh,
dyed
much better.
eyebrows. Oh my god, he looks so much better.
Much better.
Point Break. But the scenes between him and Loki, I feel like really good because that was the emotional through line that was kind of carried over from Thor.
Anyone really that interacted with Loki, and I think this is a testament to Hiddleston. Really, those are all really good scenes, and kind of when I think about the good dialogue, it's when I think of Scarlett Johansson's good dialogue, it's with Loki. If I think about Sam Jackson's good dialogue, it's with Loki. So I think it's just whether that's the character or the actor, or however you want to look at it. Hats off to Hiddleston for pulling it off.
What about negatives? Like we've been,
negatives
as
of
you
what,
said
though?
before,
we've
is there
been
anything?
negative.
Is there any sort of glaringly obvious negatives? Because for
I've
me,
rattled off plenty.
Yeah, I mean, like he's just basically lambasted the entire plot.
yeah,
As-
but
as
anything
a
else?
negative.
Anything else? Because for me, I feel like a lot of the dialogue in this, while so strong, there's some really clunky lines. Like that one that sticks out to me is when the world stops to spin. That's when we'll stop doing X, Y, Z. And it's like, what the fuck, man? Like, that makes no sense. There's some really clunky lines in here.
I will give you something that really bothers me. Is the
yeah, exactly. You do have a
the
negative. Bert.
it's just like it's a weird thing to say. Like just ask like, is there anything else we want to
Well,
talk about?
yeah. I want to talk about
Um,
some negatives.
We have been.
Yeah, well, I want to talk more about
George, are
it.
you
Why
like
are you
getting
trying to shit
drunk
on
off
this
my
film?
alcohol somehow?
Yes.
Why are you trying
No,
to
because
like?
he keeps laughing at me. I'm like, fuck you, man.
Okay, we got another movie to do here, boys. Come on.
We've got to get the banter, man.
No. Speaking of banter, the banter between Loki and Captain America when they're fighting for the first time, when he like jumps up and kicks and goes, "Not today," ha! Or his statement of the last time I saw a man standing in
above everyone in Germany.
we didn't disagree or we didn't agree.
Yeah.
And I think the one thing that really pisses me off is that clunky and dorky and awful line comes after one of the best lines of the entire film, which is that old German guy being like, he's like, when Loki looks at him and says, there are no men like me. He goes, there are always men like you.
Yeah.
Like it's just such a beautifully simple line. And really elegant, and then just to have Captain America like bumble on through and be like, "Hey guys!"
I think it kind of works in the MCU that Captain America's just a bit of a dickhead.
No, but there's a bunch of those lines. There's a bunch of those lines in this where it's almost like
That's my pinnacle.
You've
for-
got to
for
take
those.
It feels
one
like
step away from what he's actually trying to say.
yeah.
It's like it's a weird way of him inferring something.
I think
It's not
Whedon's
even that
a
he,
great
like I knew
writer.
what he was inferring. He's like,
Yeah, but it seems
was just
clunky.
badly
that's what I mean.
presented.
That's what I mean. It's
Whedon's
clunky.
a great
It's
writer,
weird.
but I feel like a lot of his writing feels like writing. Like it
Yeah.
feels like a written one-liner or
Yeah,
something.
yeah,
so
yeah,
like
yeah.
someone says on
100%.
page
Yeah.
8.
That's a good way of
say,
saying
"Not
it.
today."
Yeah.
That's a good way of saying it. So yeah, there's a bunch of those in here, and it's just like, but other than that, it's really the only big sort of negative for me.
Yeah. I'm done with that.
So
As opposed to around it.
The score is great.
Oh yeah, the
Alan
score.
Silvestri. It's
Yeah.
and it's aged. It's better with age now that theme has become so iconic.
Because that's always, and I've always thought it's a relatively bad criticism, or not a bad criticism, like a weak criticism of the film is that it doesn't have that kind of, or the MCU in general doesn't have
This is the first one to
noticeable
have.
things.
This is the first one to have a great
Yeah.
theme, I think.
Well, yeah, true. But considering how they've really expanded upon that, when you hear that in the new Infinity War trailers, you just get hit, and you're just like, oh, I feel the weight.
Yeah.
And they've been putting out a lot of marketing material of behind the scenes of actors talking about their journey and stuff, and they're starting to play some of those themes, and you just kind of get that moment of like, okay, I see what's going on here. Like I feel the weight behind it. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So, anything else anyone wants to discuss on Avengers before we get into Age of Ultron?
I think we should just jump into it.
Cool.